It's just us. I think we lost our special
He's
guest.
still here. We're just going to say hi to everybody real quick.
I
Hi,
didn't see
everybody.
it. Anyway, hi. Welcome to another Parlor Tea.
I think we're at like 26 or 27 now.
Yeah, that's great. And this one is part of our haunted road trip series. And
Virtual haunted road trip.
virtual. We're not,
If John's driving, everybody
it
look
wouldn't
out.
be that way. It would be. But yeah, we're really excited to
Let's
have
bring
this.
Sarah on.
Hey.
Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, hey.
Welcome to the Crazy
Welcome.
Bus.
Hey, thanks. The crazy
How are
bus. Oh, how are you?
Hi, Mary. Hi, Mom. Hi. What? How are you today?
Hi, Jay.
Oh, I'm lovely. How about you?
I'm lovely too.
Lovely. Genevieve, are you lovely?
Oh, yes. Very much so.
You need some education.
Nice.
If you're driving, my mom needs medication.
I think we all need medication. Hi.
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 Hey.
So, why don't you just give a little brief about who you are, and then we'll go into our second road trip.
Sure. So I'm Sarah Blake. I'm the creator of HushedUpHistory.com, and I'm also of Twin Crows Tarot. I write, research all the crazy, kind of forgotten, shocking, unusual, delightful pieces of history that may have gotten left behind. And like I mentioned, I'm also a tarot reader. And the lovely people at the Parlour, you guys, have been awesome in allowing me to do readings at your place, classes, workshops. And yeah.
Oh, and
now I'm here.
Calling the Beyond.
Calling
September
the Beyond.
6th.
September 6th.
They're up there. There's only a small amount left. So
there's always a small amount.
Yeah,
this is true.
There's our information down there running along the ticker right now. If anyone wants to come see us, we're at Main Street in Keyport. Oh,
so
that'd be a little emergency. Sorry.
So Sarah and I actually had talked about doing these really amazing things. Some of the places we've actually had the privilege of visiting, and some of the places we haven't, but they're on our bucket list. And we came up with this awesome idea about utilizing Sarah's background in being a historian, as well as the creepy macabre, which is great, and giving a mixture of the two. And we came up with doing the second of our series, which is, Sarah, would you like to say it?
The second installment of this virtual haunted road trip, St. Louis, Missouri, one of the most haunted locations in America, the Lemp Mansion.
Yay. So
before we get into all of that, I love that everybody wants the title of the most haunted space.
There's 100 most haunteds in America.
Yes.
How do you quantify?
I don't know, but I love it. I love that there's like an understated competition.
You're the most haunted, and so are you, and so are you.
There's Jillian. Hi, Jillian. Jillian and I, actually, a couple years back, we did a Sinister Sisters episode on this. So this is something that is really fun for us.
Awesome.
We're just excited about the opportunity to give you guys things that we enjoy, which hope that you guys enjoy. And I just find that all these types of things are interesting, not just from a paranormal side, but from the historical side, and how you could sort of see the two sort of intertwine. So I'm very excited about. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer and preacher of that the paranormal and history are very, very close friends, and they should be very, very close friends. 100%.
Yeah,
So,
I think that the history part of it gives it context. It gives the story, the ghost
Yeah.
story foundation. It gives the purpose behind that haunting. That's I always make sure that I include that with my ghost tours too. Like all of those stories have a very strong foundation in history. So I love this.
Yeah.
I think that when people do the historical side of it, I think it becomes more relatable
Hmm.
because there isn't anything that other people might not have gone through or they felt or they understood. So I think that when you do the history side of it and then the other paranormal side of it, I think it becomes more intriguing.
It does. We always, we always have been taught, and it's always been kind of phrased that ghost stories are purely story. That's it. Fantasy, fiction. This is not real. It's a story. But when you add the historical background to it, it's, oh no, this is real. These are actually these apparitions that people are claiming to see. These names, they weren't just made up. These people lived. They existed. They occupied the same space. So it does really cement it down as something that is so much more real and really removes that kind of fiction aspect out of it and makes it much more human.
The other part of it too that I really like is that the paranormal aspect of it actually helps to keep the history alive, because I can tell somebody a story that's just history and they're probably gonna be like, okay, yeah, they may not pay attention to the details, but if you have a ghost in that story, people will absolutely remember it. They will remember how it made them feel. They will remember thinking, they'll get that spooky kind of vibe and they will remember it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the ghosts are the history still running around. It's the physical embodiment of the history.
And I think it also kind of reinforces what we do with the Calling the Beyond, where we kind of have that air of respect for any of the paranormal entities that are there because they were once human.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just so the people that might have just stumbled upon us and don't really understand what we're talking about with the Calling of the Beyond, it is, in a brief way, it's a retrospect of the abilities that, how it started, why it started, who it started it, and the background to a seance and the tools that were utilized during that time frame, all the way up to a more modern style tools of forms of communication to the spirit world.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, humans have always wanted to be able to connect to those who have passed. We always have. You can find documentation of that being pursued in like the earliest records written human history. So this is a kind of retrospective. It's a very broad umbrella retrospective, but it looks at what they used to do in the earliest days of real formal gatherings to try to connect, all the way up to, like you said, what we see today in TV shows and all that.
Right. So why don't we start with why don't you tell us about the wonderful Lemp Mansion? It is a beautiful mansion.
It's a beautiful mansion. So the Lemp Mansion is this gorgeous structure. It is still standing. You can go see it. They are an event space, and you can stay overnight there. It is a restaurant. This is a very real physical place you can still go to. But it's called the Lemp Mansion. And the reason it is called the Lemp Mansion is because of the Lemp family who lived there. And the Lemp family, the building was built in the late 1860s, and it became this huge kind of Victorian showpiece of architecture in the early 1900s after it was renovated by the Lemp family. The original Lemp that came over, Johann, he went by Adam Lemp, he came over from Germany, and he settled in St. Louis in 1838, and he wanted to be a grocer. He started this grocery business, but he realized something. He was from Germany. He knew how to brew beer. And there was a large German population in the area who didn't have that beer that they had at home in Germany. And he tapped into that, and he and his family after him became the picture of success in this industry in St. Louis. The Lemp family became the brewing family of St. Louis, and it's his family with the Lemp Mansion.
I find it fascinating that they came for one purpose, and then their actual dynamics of why changed into something else, which was they wanted to do a grocery store, which is actually, am I wrong, by the arch, where it was the arch of the St. Louis Arch?
In St. Louis.
Yeah. And it changed to the beer aspect of it, and they became extremely wealthy, like overnight.
Yeah. Wildly wealthy. He tapped into this market, and it made them, like I said, like the picture of wealth, success, luxury. They were the top picture of it. If you thought of any of these attributes of this like intense wealth, it was the Lemp family.
Well, I find it fascinating because it's also a sort of depiction of what people were supposed to, what they were intending to do was come over and start a new life for freedoms and whatever, but to build and have, this sort of no ceiling kind of thing. And your success was based off of whatever you wanted to do and become as successful as you wanted. And this was a prime example of people migrating over and becoming wealthy. And
yeah, I mean, at its height, the Lemp Brewery was 5 city blocks. This was a massive compound.
Wow.
I mean, look at the size of that. I mean, think about that time period and how much effort and how much energy went into building these structures.
Yep.
There's no way that this was like a fly-by-night kind of thing. This was
how many people they probably had working there. So they were probably well received on the amount of work that people were based in the time frame. I felt that there was probably a lot of jobs that were filled in the town. So I'm sure they were extremely grateful for that as well.
I mean, it definitely helped put St. Louis on the map in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So
and there's something else too that is also unique to the area that allowed them to excel with this.
Mm-hmm. So part of the wild success that the Lemps had with this brewery business is there was a cave system under the brewery, and this cave, it was a huge cave. It wasn't by any means something that was just used by them. This was something that was used by a lot of people in the area, this extensive cave system. And what it did was it gave the perfect climate for the type of brewing that they were looking to achieve. So you have, it's kind of funny that you have, like, as you see in the picture there, you have this massive picture, this picture of, industry and brick and mortar and machinery. And then you have this natural component underneath it of these caves. And they had to work together to create this perfect product, to create this brewing empire that they had.
Did they drill those caves, or were they already existing?
They were naturally existing caves.
Wow. And they built this massive 5-block building over it. I just find it fascinating. I wonder what those were just natural pieces, or were they dug or dealt for a reason prior to this?
I think that's just the natural geology of the area.
Yeah. Wow. And maybe I'm stepping above a little bit. The natural caves were limestone, correct?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay.
The majority limestone.
We'll talk about that later in the series.
That does come into play later. Far beyond
but
cool refrigeration system.
So we know that he came. Did he have? It was him and his wife that came. Did they have other family members? Were there children at that time, or did they?
From what I understand, the eldest son, William J. Lemp, came over. And it's really with William Lemp, Adam's son, that we start to get this legacy as to why the Lemp family, yes, they had this very prestigious, status as this brewery family. But the reason that we are talking about the Lemp family on this haunted road trip is because the Lemp family and the Lemp Mansion were plagued by horrible, horrible tragedies throughout the family. And it really starts with William J. Lemp and his wife, Julia, that we start to see this string of tragedies throughout the family.
Before we get into the tragedies, I'm just curious to if you think about it, you have a lot of these wealthy families that had subsequent tragedies and things like that. And it's almost like that price of wealth. But it's also, I wonder sometimes if it's the types of, it's how they got the money that may have plagued the family, like when you look at their house, I don't know.
It's hard to, I was thinking the same thing, Genevieve. It's really, it's inspiring because of the way that this happened, but it's also, is this something that you always see in these types of families that come and they're wealthy, but there's so much of tragedy and death and this like really karma kind of a vibe.
Yeah, you get to the top and you could just go so high before everything kind of tumbles.
Sort of like, I heard someone say this the other day, the brighter the light, the longer the shadow.
That's beautiful.
Lemp Mansion's got a lot of shadows in that case then. Yeah.
So
let's look at the Lemp Mansion again and see. This is the mansion at the time around 1860, I think. That's a sketch.
Early days.
Yeah, the early days.
It's big space. It's probably, I always find it funny when you look at it and they go, oh, that's great. It's a mansion. Then you go inside and it's massive.
It's this cavernous.
But not only that, like not only do you have this gigantic space, but think about the 1860s, right? The amount of energy it took to heat that space, the people that they employed to take care of the space, the constant upkeep to maintain that lifestyle. It's not just the actual house that indicates the wealth. It's all of the accessories and all of the things that go along with it, especially like St. Louis. They have some pretty rough winters.
Yeah.
You think about all of that stuff and what that house must have also seen in addition to the human component.
Right. And then thinking about like if they were the tunnels underneath the environment and they were sort of considered a refrigeration piece, would that have changed the dynamics of the house? Would it make it cooler?
With the energy of, we'll get into the limestone energy, I'm sure, but let's talk about William.
Let's talk about William. So William Lemp, he took this industry. It was his father who kind of started it, but William Lemp really revolutionized it. He really took the business and this concept of brewing and creating this product and launched it into a whole other atmosphere. He installed the first refrigeration machine in an American brewery. He extended the idea to refrigerated rail cars, and it was really because of his innovations and his way of thinking that it really catapulted the Lemp brands to be worldwide. It was really because of these decisions that he was making. But like I said, it's really this line of tragedy that really starts with William Lemp. He marries his wife, Julia. They have a newborn daughter. She only survives for 1 day. That was the first death of this Lemp family. He has many other children. He had 4 sons. He had 4 sons, but his 4th son, Frederick, was his pride and joy. He adored Frederick. He wanted Frederick to be, even though he was the 4th son, he was not the oldest, but he wanted Frederick to be the one to take over the business. Well, Frederick died at 28 years old. They feel that he had some sort of heart issue, and it was this death of Frederick that devastated William Lemp. He never got over the death of his son Frederick, his favorite son, the one that he wanted to pass along this legacy and hand over the keys to this kingdom that his family had built. So we have the tragic death of Frederick. William Lemp was also very, very good friends with Fred Pabst of Pabst Blue Ribbon. We have all these brewery families getting along. Then he dies. So we have the loss of his son at 28 years old. We have the loss of his best friend. And on the morning of February 13th, 1904, he got up, went down to breakfast, said he wasn't feeling well, didn't eat anything. At 9:30 in the morning, he went upstairs to the second floor bedroom, pulled out his weapon, and took his life in the bedroom. He was found by the servants in the bedroom.
I think that's
So,
this article, right?
The senior William Lemp.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, grief is, strikes people very differently.
Yeah.
And when there's an emotional attachment to something that is so deep, and I'm not negating the fact that his other children at all either, but apparently based off of what you said, that his idea of this individual being the one that could do the business and continue his legacy through his son's legacy, I think is kind of fascinating, but I guess it's also crippling. I mean, people don't like certain things, but we won't go that route. But
Well, it added to the fact that not only was this his favorite son, not only was this the one that he wanted to continue this, he was only 28 years old, and he died very unexpectedly. So we have layers of shock when this happened to this family that he really took very, very hard. And then when you lose your best friend, it adds, it just layer upon layer upon layer on William Lemp Jr.
What year was this? Do we know?
Frederick died. Where did Frederick die? Frederick died. He was 28 years old. I'm not sure what year it was. But Lemp took his own life in 1904.
So it had to have been the late 1800s, early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, 1906, his wife Julia Lemp dies of cancer in the same bedroom.
The same bedroom of Frederick.
The same bedroom of her husband.
Husband.
Okay.
So that's William Sr., right?
Correct.
Mm.
So those are three major tragedies, and they're things that are, you've got the untimely death of the son, which I'm sure is a lot of unfinished business. You have all of that energy still there. Then you've got the father dying by suicide. That's a lot of unfinished business. That's a very tragic death as well. And now you've got the mother also dying, probably with some significant amount of tragedy surrounding that too. Pretty significant things. Kind of some recipes for ghosts right there.
Yeah. And it was just the beginning, unfortunately, for this Lemp family.
And Luana says there's so much sadness leaving a mark in their space. I do believe that when there's such heartache and sorrow, that the space becomes a sort of embedded in the reality of things, which that'll be another question that
I always think of houses and structures. They're not just these inanimate spaces. They become part of people's families and part of people's lives. It makes sense that there would be that residual energy there.
When
it's pressed into the walls.
Right. And then, we talk about people saying that, their house is alive, that it is the forms of shelter. I never really thought about it till now. I wonder if, the house feels the the loss as well.
Oh, definitely.
So that's also something I think that, you know, because I was going to ask you later on, like if you can explain the difference between residual as well as a haunting. You know, there are different depictions of that. You don't have to answer that now, but maybe you could talk about it when we get into the other part. But I
Absolutely.
do feel that, you know, there is a sadness that I feel that, you know, if a home could be like such a part of someone's life in many ways, that
Hmm.
their loss is just as great.
And I mean, when it's also that kind of loss, you know, you have these different family members, and it deeply affects the home, but that person also carries it if they leave that home into their own home. They always take a piece of it with them.
Right.
But also, this house, this majestic home, was built by this family that is also now passing down this trauma and this this tragedy.
Hmm. Yeah, and part of it, we, beyond, as I just said, taking a part of that house and taking a part of that energy with you. She was not part of the tragedies that took place in the house, but William Lemp's youngest daughter, Elsa. She was, I said, the youngest child of William Lemp Sr. She was married to a president of a brass and metal company in 1910. They separated in 1918. They filed for divorce. They got remarried. They got remarried in March of 1920. So this didn't take place in the Lemp Mansion proper, but they got remarried in March of 1920. And later that month, that same month, March 20th, 1920, she went up to the bedroom and followed in the steps of her father and took her own life in the same manner. And when she did this, William Lemp's son, her brother, is said to have said to people, "Well, that's the Lemp family for you."
You know, what I was thinking was, you know, back in that time frame, everybody looks as homes and oh, that's the prestigious so and so's house. That's like other people like the joy and the happiness and the you know, that camaraderie that's in that house with all the people. Hi, Donna. Diana. Oh no, it's Donna.
Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hi. So the thought that all of a sudden their love for this home and what they built on it has now changed to always seeing the tragedy of it. I think it's sad to you know, to know that, but I mean, it's just the way it is. But
I think that's this one. I've got that and nope. But we do have the next one coming up.
The Elsa
lady.
Oh, the Lavender Lady. Yeah. So here we have, you know, we've already have a string of tragic deaths taking part with this family. Then we come to
real quick on this one.
Yeah.
Frederick Lemp having his funeral at the family home, which was a really common thing to do at that time.
It was at the family home, and it was completely private.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was something that was very, very deep in this family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you mentioned the Lavender Lady. So now, moving on to, unfortunately, the next link in this horrific chain of the Lemp family. We had William Lemp Sr. There is also William Lemp Jr., Billy Lemp. He took over the brewing company. The brewing company, let me try that one more time, in 1904. And he had married this woman named Lillian Handlin 5 years earlier. They moved to the home. Lillian was allegedly nicknamed the Lavender Lady because everything that she could have of this color, she had of this color. Carriages, clothing, bedding, wall. Anything that she could have that was this color lavender, she just surrounded herself with this color. And the nickname really... What's that?
Sounds like someone I know. Just called me just now, Karen.
Lavender Lady.
Yes.
But the Lavender Lady, Lillian, and Billy Lemp had a very, very tumultuous marriage. She filed for divorce in 1908, citing that Billy Lemp was cheated on her multiple times, that he was cruel to her, mental torture, among all kinds of other indignities. And this divorce hearing, it only lasted 11 days. And in this 11 days, Lillian was granted full custody of their only son, William III, and Billy Lemp was only given visitation rights. So when we talk about Billy Lemp, we go back to what we were talking about previously with the caves. Allegedly, Billy Lemp used these caves for a lot more than just brewery business. He was said to have a lot of very lavish parties in these caves, where all manner of things took place that were unspoken of once you left those caves. And these were things that were obviously very, very concerning to Lillian, and things that were brought up in this trial, which, like I said, it was a divorce proceeding, and it only lasted 11 days. And it was very, very decisive that she was granted full custody, Billy Lemp was out. And it's really where this nickname of the Lavender Lady really started getting into headlines, because I believe the photo that you showed refers to her as the Lavender Lady.
Look how pretty she is.
Yeah.
Rich Brewer was accused.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if she was a witch.
Lillian?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, she
Just like
surrounded herself with lavender. I mean, I'm sure that
surrounded herself with lavender. Yep.
You never know.
Tony. So what was the, like, after this, and you know, they separated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure the you know, it was probably, I mean, there was probably substantial evidence for her to have said that this happened, because normally they wouldn't really grant as much visitation for the father as well. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't seem at that time frame that was something that, oh, I'm going to give it to the mom and then the dad and then whatever.
There was a lot of stories about Billy Lemp and things that were committed in those caves and in these lavish parties, and it was enough that, you know, it was their only child, and to Lillian.
So what happened after they split? I mean, we're still surmising that this business is still going on. It's still going, and everything is flourishing.
For Billy Lemp, it was a flourishing business. But then Billy Lemp ran into the early 1920s, and Prohibition happened. And Prohibition, as you would imagine, wrecked this industry. And this is this industry that this family was built on. This was everything. We saw the...
Right?
What's that?
They did. They didn't do the grocery store anymore. They just...
They built this gigantic brewery. They had turned into this worldwide brand, and here comes Prohibition. And it destroyed this family's business. Prohibition happened early 1920s. The brewery was sold at auction in 1922. It was sold to a shoe company. And on December 29th, 1922, Billy Lemp went into the office in the Lemp Mansion and took his own life in the same manner as his father, his sister, continuing that chain of tragedy of the Lemp family.
How long did Prohibition last? I don't remember that. Do you know?
I don't remember a specific number of years off the top of my head.
But it was a substantial amount to lose a considerable amount.
It was definitely enough to destroy these industries very, very quickly.
Wow.
I should know that because I talk about it on my ghost tour. 1920 to 1933.
Yeah.
What? So did they go on their merry way? Were they still living in the house? Like,
well, the Lemp Jr., the junior Lemp, his office was in the Lemp Mansion.
Okay.
So he was but I mean, also between the office and between the caves, he was there a lot. He did have a separate residence, but I mean, he was so tied to this Lemp Mansion. He was probably there more than he was at his own home. Mm-hmm. And they did have the one child, the William Lemp III, the only son of Billy and Lillian. He dies of a heart attack at the age of 42. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got to think back then. What was do we know statistically what the age people? Because
that was young for that age.
Yeah. And you have him, and I'm sure to some family members this brought back a very, very uncomfortable and unpleasant echo. He drops of a heart attack very, very young. It's the same, another heart issue in the family that took the son Frederick in his late 20s, which then led to their father, led to this.
There's got to be like now people are probably thinking, okay, this there's a curse on the family.
If you wanted to make a case for cursed families, this is the Lemp family is a pretty solid book of evidence for something like that, because it doesn't stop there.
Oh, okay. So what's next?
What's next? So I mentioned that William Lemp had a number of children. He had another son, Louis, that died of natural causes in his 60s. But we have Charles Lemp. Charles Lemp was the third son of William Lemp. He left the brewery in 1917. He had no interest in that industry. He wanted to go into banking. He kind of dabbled in politics a little bit. He was kind of all over the place. He never married, but he had a reputation for being kind of a sour guy to deal with, very argumentative, kind of flew off the handle at times. And he lived in the mansion with his dog, servants, and there was another married couple that moved into the home with him. In April of 1941, he sent a letter to a St. Louis funeral home. And it was an odd letter. The letter requested that in the case of his death, his remains should be taken by ambulance immediately to the Missouri crematory. His body is not to be bathed, clothed, or changed. His ashes were to be put in a wicker box and buried on a farm with an unmarked grave. No funeral, no notice in the papers, nothing. He wanted, upon his death, he wanted to disappear. Now, 8 years later, he took his life in the same fashion as his other family members. First, he went into his basement. He ended the life of his dog, and then went upstairs and took his own life. He did leave a suicide note, and in it only said, St. Louis, May 10th, 1949. In case I am found dead, blame it on no one but me.
Was there any theories around the fact that everybody went up to the same room and took their own lives?
It wasn't all in the same room. Billy Lemp Jr., it was an office. Right. There was a bedroom, but it's all in the same house. I mean, so, yeah.
And the dog, come on.
And the dog, yeah. And Charles Lemp at that time, he was older than a lot of the other family members. The senior Lemp, when he took his own life, he was 68 years old. Charles Lemp, when he did this, he was 77.
So after all of this went on, what is the wife still alive, or she was dead?
Lillian, the lavender lady, Lillian?
Yes.
Lillian, I'm not sure what path she took after divorcing herself from the Lemp family.
Yeah, but I think if there was some form of something, maybe she just lived her life.
I would understand if she wanted to disappear and just live a quiet, peaceful life. But you also know that she was somewhat comfortable in this wealth, being able to have the lavender. But on the flip side of that, I have read in a couple places that one of the forms of mental torture that Billy Lemp did to her that was spoken about in court was that he would give her these exorbitant amounts of money and tell her that she had to spend it.
Yeah.
She had to get rid of this money. She had to spend it. So it would not surprise me if Lillian Lemp went about her life at that point, especially after their son dies at the age of 42.
Yeah.
Where does she go from there? I'm not sure.
She lived to 1960. She was
Okay.
like very old when she was elderly when she passed. And the one thing I saw about her is that the only time she ever wore black was in court. To make a little statement. She always wore lavender.
A little bit.
So what were who were the remaining individuals and what happened after that?
So the last of the Lemp children was Edwin Lemp. After Charles' death, he was the only surviving son of the senior William Lemp. He was the youngest. He worked in the brewery. He wasn't like his other one brother who completely removed himself from the business. He did work in the brewery until 1913. He lived to be 90 years old. He lived until 1970. But his final order to his caretaker was that upon his death, the family art collection and all family heirlooms were to be destroyed. And that was followed through. His caretaker went through and destroyed everything that had to do with that family.
So there's no remaining?
There's got to be something really
There's
deep
got to be, because there are surviving members of the Lemp family today.
But there's no, like, it's like they were very clearly ending their legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after he dies in 1950, the Lemp Mansion becomes a boarding house. And it fell into various states of repair. There was nearby construction that had an effect on the property and some of the other buildings that were part of the Lemp property. And then in 1973, it was purchased by Richard Pointer, and it's his family that has run and owned the building ever since and has turned it into what it is today. This beautiful, like I had mentioned previously, event space, hotel, restaurant. And like I said, you can go to this building today. You can visit it. You can stay there. And if you go on their website, they have embraced this tragic part of the history, and they now do ghost tours and other various events looking at this tragic history of the Lemp family.
Look at how it's changed.
Yeah. So there was another rumor about the
child.
Correct. Can you talk about that one?
There was a rumor that there was a child from Billy Lemp, and that the child was kept and hidden in the attic, never to be seen by the public because of, from the report that I read, said that the child had Down syndrome, and that the child was hidden in the attic, never to be seen or heard from. There are living, as I mentioned just previously, there are living members of the Lemp family today, and they very, very firmly deny that this ever happened. There was no secret child. There was no, nobody living in the attic, and that's from the Lemp family. Whether we would actually ever know the truth of this or not.
Why would they admit it?
Yeah.
So that's the big history of the Lemp. How they came over, they wanted one thing, and they designed an empire. Went through all this tragedy, more so than probably other people would see in their lifetimes. A lot of sorrow and so on, which I feel embeds itself into an environment that could start to feel very negative in an establishment based off of the death, the suicide, the sorrow, the crying, the weeping, and so on.
The stress.
The stress of this whole thing, the feeling of alone, why did this happen? So then, when did there start to I guess come into fruition of all of these alleged hauntings start?
I haven't found, I was looking to see if there was any accounts from any of the later Lemp family members having any kind of experiences. I was not able to find any of that. My assumption is that after it had turned into a boarding house, there would have started to have been, but that was also in the 1950s. So that wasn't something that would have been very actively talked about. Now that it is this very accessible place, all of the renovations that went into it, there have been reports of both cold spots, hot spots, apparitions, like a staticky type of feeling. The classic darting behind a wall, you see things. There's a lot of, and it's really like a wide variety of things that you have reported in this mansion.
So, if I remember, when you look up the Lemp Mansion to find out some information regarding it, it does automatically first paragraph. It says this is a haunted location.
One of the most haunted, haunted. What is the curse? Yeah.
Correct. And I find that fascinating that when you look it up, that's the first thing that it says.
It's wild to me how, this family, how you had talked about before, had this, wasn't looking for a huge, massive wealth, but they grew into this, I think the term you used is perfect, empire. And then this is what they've become known for. It
is sad because of all the effort and time and blood, sweat, and tears, and what they did for a community by building this massive space for people to be, taken care of in their own way by jobs and feeding families, and they're renowned because of that. But now they're only recognized for it's a haunted location and these people are haunted.
But when you think about it too, though, like you talk about whether or not people had experiences when the family was still inhabiting the home, and whether they were, people where they were experiencing. My personal thought on that is they probably were. And you've got those whispers, those echoes of those tragedies that were probably calling to those other ones that also followed in those same footsteps. That's how I view it, that people probably didn't speak about it.
That's, my impression of that is, like, how would we know?
Yeah.
We wouldn't, unless they very specifically documented it and had it in a way that would come out. But that's my personal opinion. I agree with you that there more than likely was something, but how would we know about it?
And you have the family passing down this property throughout the generations. You've got this immense feeling, this heaviness that goes along with those things that have happened within that home, plus the responsibility of that wealth. And
just the name.
Oh, yeah. And you've got all of that stuff associated with it. I think that there's probably no doubt that people that the family knew. If anything, I bet you the servants were the ones to talk to that had the stories and that would be willing to have spoken about them.
Well, based off of what I get out of this as well, they seemed like a very close kind of personal, family that like to keep to themselves. So if they were experiencing things, maybe it was very well received, knowing they were still part of it. We froze. Repeat that again. You froze.
Yeah, you're back.
She froze.
I said, or it was kept as that family secret that nobody talked about.
Right.
Because they were so close knit and they were so closed off.
Yeah, I mean the last surviving child said, "Burn it all. Do not let all of these remnants of this family pass.
And there's got to be something to that.
They
one.
knew.
Yeah.
Or they felt it. They were having some kind of experience.
Well, I mean, just when Elsa took her own life, the fact that you have this brother just being like, well, that's our family for you, like, what?
But I wonder, and I don't know anything about the historical, like the land itself. I mean, we all know, or if you don't, that limestone is sort of a conduit to attract the spiritual side. It's like a magnet for it, and it sort of gives the energy for things to come into play, right?
It's like a battery.
It's like a battery for the spiritual side. I wonder what those were. Was that land a cursed part of the land?
Probably.
Like,
I mean, the United States was cursed in some way.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I just find it fascinating, like the whole aspect of it. So you had stated, Sarah, that people can go there and eat dinner or stay overnight and do investigations and so on. What were some of the things that maybe people have seen or talked about or heard, or do you have any of that?
I've read that people, the classic hot spot, cold spot. I read somewhere that people experience like sudden like more so than like the hot spot, but like a strong like burning sensation, very, very suddenly. I read one account that talked about like a very static electricity type of feel, but there was also accounts of people seeing figures in the building and seeing the out of the corner of your eye, the darting behind the wall. There are some people, and this brings into the question of did this happen or not, there are people that claim to see the child that was locked into the attic.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
that's very sad.
There are other reports of another little boy seen in the building.
He's harassing me. I had to pick him up.
So I'm just saying this. Like, what about the lavender lady? Is there anybody that because in my opinion, this is just me, if she loved lavender, I'm sure she wore the lavender fragrance. Was there any forms of smells throughout the home that you smelt lavender?
I didn't read anything specifically that mentioned the scent of lavender, but she was named in one of the articles I was reading as one of the figures that people have seen, which is really interesting considering she did not die in that house.
But she experienced trauma in that house.
Yep, and she was very, very strongly tied to that house, to that family.
So that there are certain, like, and I've said this before, I always feel that, there are so many beautiful stories, so there are so many tragic stories, and there are so many haunted locations that I don't feel everybody gets the justice of certain things. Like certain places, like maybe the Conjuring house, they'll get that because somebody decided that they wanted to do a movie or whatever. I feel, I mean, I don't know anything they did a movie-wise of the Lemp Mansion, or is there something that sort of was based off of it, but it's not?
I read that there were attempts to create a film about the Lemp family, specifically focusing around Elsa, but it hasn't come to fruition.
It's kind of sad that it would be really great that you can do this kind of story and explain to them, like to people, on the history of it and how and the tragedy around it, and then this spiritual side of it all.
Some people don't want that though. If you got the last living ancestor is not a descendant, is not wanting to have anything left, they might not want that.
Yeah, didn't you say something that they approached about it, but they decided they didn't want that?
I read that there was talk of a film about the Lemp family, specifically centering around Elsa, but it hasn't come to fruition. There is a book written by author Troy Taylor about the Lemp Mansion, and I know that he did speak to one of the Lemp family members that is still around, and that it was difficult to have that discussion in that interview.
Mm. Mm. So you haven't been, you never went.
I haven't been.
But it's,
I would love to,
definitely on
but I haven't been.
our bucket list.
Put it on the list.
Put it on the list.
On the list. So, but you did hear that the place is really charming and it's great, and the experience are awesome.
It's kind of like how I had talked about before, how like you have this industrial metal, you know, this structure and these natural caves underneath, and it was such like a juxtaposition. It's almost like that's still there, because you have on one side you have people having weddings there and these you know, these big events and dinners and parties, and then you have that underlying, but this is an extremely haunted location. There's this duality that seems to have, you know, changed, but it's still there in this structure.
Doesn't that make you think about all of the other places? There's probably every single place that has that level of history probably has that duality.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, do they go, I have two questions. One, do they go through the tunnels as a tour, or they don't?
I don't know if they do as a tour, but if you go online, there are photographs of investigators that have been able to go into the tunnels. So I don't know if this was a private arrangement for them to go look at the tunnels, or if this was a special event of some kind, but there are photographs that you can see what these tunnels look like.
So, as you guys know, but maybe some of the viewers might not know, there are different forms of hauntings. So, do you feel that these hauntings are residual pieces, or are they fully knowledgeable of what's going on and they can interact with people if they choose to?
I personally feel that they would be intelligent hauntings. And the reason that I go towards that is because if this was a residual haunting, if this was something that was playing on a loop repeatedly, there's been so much in that house. This wasn't a case of one person in a small building. This was a mansion that had multiple people with multiple forms of tragedy in multiple places. My personal opinion would be that this is an intelligent type of haunting, because it's not something that like the tape is just playing over and over and over again. This is a wide variety of experiences that people have had in different places in the building. So that's my opinion.
Has anybody captured any kind of EVPs, or, you know, maybe visual?
Yeah, if you go and you just do like a search for Lemp Mansion and hauntings, there are photos, there's evidence online.
Have you seen the evidence and stuff?
I've seen some photos.
What is your depiction?
I personally just feel that there is a lot in that building. I feel like there is a lot of hauntings in that building. The photographs that I looked at, to me personally, and this is not, you know, this is not talking down to anybody who took the photos or anything like that. I personally didn't get a whole lot from the photos that I saw, but just knowing that building and knowing what has happened in that building and reading accounts, I personally feel that place is definitely haunted.
Right.
By multiple entities.
I mean, it's really fascinating on many different years and levels, and male and female and children and ages, that they're just embedded in that I wouldn't think that that they took something and built a dream. I
Yeah.
don't see why they wouldn't be a part of watching over a space. And maybe it's not something, because when people say that something is haunted, it might be that it's haunted, but it's not a bad haunting. It's not like get out, that kind of thing.
So, I mean, maybe, now that you have these very happy, joyful occasions being there, maybe they like being around that compared to the kind of despair and tragedy
Right.
that they had while they were there at that time.
I mean, that's kind of a nice way to actually look at it. Would you stay overnight?
Absolutely.
Genevieve?
Do you have to ask?
Would you?
Yeah, I would.
You would stay if we were there.
I wouldn't stay in a place by myself. I mean,
I would.
I don't know.
I would.
100%. I would.
Yeah,
do
I would.
It myself.
Yourself?
I would do it. Absolutely.
I would do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd do it.
So, I mean, I find it really fascinating. I find it fascinating and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that it's a place that I think that people should know about. But if you don't know about it, and then it just falls to the wayside, and then it just becomes a building.
And then the ghosts don't know what to do with themselves because they don't have any more energy.
So we all know that we would all stay there. Some of us would stay there alone. Some of us would. It would be great to do a seance there.
Absolutely.
Let's just say what are your top 5 places that you have not been to that you would love to go to, Sarah?
Oh God.
If it's too much, give me 2.
See, this is the kind of thing where if you ask me something like this, like name your top, my brain just goes blank. I can tell you, are we talking US or are we talking worldwide?
Both.
Oh God.
Start with US.
With US. Well, I mean, I would love to go to the Lemp Mansion. Obviously, I would love to go there. That is one of the places I would love to go. I would love to go to New Orleans. I have never been there.
We're doing it.
As far as like worldwide, I can't think of anywhere like specific off the top of my head on the spot like that. I can tell you a region. Like I would love to go to Ireland and experience some of those locations there.
Yeah, I mean Ireland, Scotland. I've been to Prague, which is part of the Czech Republic. With that whole area, it is fascinating, and I just think from a historical side, from a creepy, haunting side, it is hauntingly beautiful over in Romania. That whole other area, and Prague is probably one of my favorite international place. I've been there 3 times. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I feel like going to the Paris catacombs has to be on the list too.
Oh yeah.
That's like every goth girl's
destination. That's considered the sewer tours, correct? Like they go in the
do they call it the sewers? I mean,
that's what I think that they were
dead.
Well, I mean, that's what I thought they ended up calling it for the longest time, but no one ever wanted to do it. So I was like, oh, God.
But in Prague, in that area, you've got those ossuaries, the cathedrals with bones and
like the experience that Kathy Kelly ended up telling us about the last time. I mean, I get it. There are places in this world that are darker than dark. Like no light.
100%.
I want to go there.
100%.
It's just, if, like I always say, when people come into our store, and they ask questions, or if it was at the other situation, it was like, if you could see the light in a painting that is flowers or a landscape or a sunset, you could also see the beauty in the darkness. And that's just my take on that. I think there's beauty in everything. It's
Maybe you are a goth girl, John.
I always tell you I'm gothic, but
Well, John, where are your places that you would go to? What's your list?
I would love to go to Romania. I would love to go through that part by Transylvania, that whole region, because I think that region is beautiful. I think it's very dark. I think it's beautiful. I just think there's a lot of history there. I think it's rich in war and tragedy that way, but I think that it is highly haunted. I think that it is an area that it could be very enlightening, but also scary.
Yeah.
But there's that. And then I would love to go to Edinburgh.
Ooh.
And go
yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Mary King's Close in Scotland.
Yeah.
Those they have isn't that where the catacombs? They have catacombs over there in Edinburgh, right?
They're not really catacombs. It's an underground city.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that to me is fascinating. So, yeah. So, if you get a chance and you want to do something fun, go to St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
Stay at the Lemp Mansion.
Stay at the Lemp Mansion.
There
Genevieve, where would you go?
I got two opposite ends of the spectrum. I've got, Scotland and Ireland, I think, are two really big ones that I would have to do. Mary King's Close. I watched one of those paranormal shows with that. It's the only time I actually called my mom. I was so scared watching that show. I don't know what it was about the energy in that space that I called my mom. And you guys know I don't really get scared that often. So that would be one part of the spectrum. The other part, Valley of the Kings, Egypt. Gotta get there. Have to get there. I feel like that would just be an energetic battery that would just, have to do that.
It's really very funny is that you bringing that up. When you look at the whole Egyptian history, they've always thought of and knew about life after death. That was always preparing your next life of being that you bring your riches and your wealth into that environment, so the prestigiousness could carry over. So it's very enlightening that we always look at them and go, how did they do the pyramids and how did they do this? I think that they were so above their mentality, their ability to.
They had a lot more technology that we don't know about.
I think.
Oh yeah,
I totally do.
100%.
I've been obsessed with Egyptology since I was really young, and I watched this.
Me too.
Guys, I read this article about this forensic anthropologist. They were trying to figure out exactly how the mummification process went. So they had a person who donated his body to science, and they did the whole mummification process based on what they theorized the Egyptian mummification process was. They did the prayers, they did the procedures, they wrapped the body, and all I could think is this poor guy who donated his body to science is somewhere waking up in the Egyptian underworld going, how did I get here?
How?
I didn't sign up for this.
How did I get here? I don't know where. I took a wrong turn in Albuquerque.
So I know we want to keep this to a point so we can re-show this. But I found it.
We
It is.
passed our point, so
I found it very interesting. I'm sorry. I find things interesting.
you don't have to
Maybe
apologize.
there's a way of breaking it up and doing a two-parter, but
Yeah.
I find it interesting. And I always find it fascinating. No matter what it is or who it is, there's always somebody either believing the fact or wanting to know that there is. And having an experience that is, really very life altering to other people to know and feel and see. So I'm sure that this place is very well, people go there quite a bit to feel it and know it and see it and do it, because I think that I would do that as well.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that, because I found it really very enlightening, and sad.
Yeah.
That even back then, I'm sure, that was that whole thing. And I always remember my grandmother used to say to me, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. And to me, this is a perfect example, is that we have a reputation. Whatever happens in this house stays in this house no matter what.
Mm.
I think
It
that
also-
is funneled through.
it kind of also shows that just because you have money doesn't mean you have happiness, and doesn't mean you have everything that you want or need. And I think that there's a definite lesson there. And I think also, for me, part of it is, you guys know how much I love a good ghost story. There's so much, like, sounds weird, but there's so much romance in a ghost story. And this, the tragic tale of the family that's fallen, and all of their wealth was not enough to keep them happy. And it's just like, that is like Haunting of Hill House. It's Bly Manor. All of those classic ghost stories that, God, I just love them so much. I just love them so much.
So I have to ask, I know that
right there, Luana, yes.
I have to ask this question, since we are all in the driver's seat of this. What is our next road trip? And I already had an idea, so hopefully, I'm just gonna say it. I really think we should do Lizzie Borden.
Great. All in. Okay.
Packing my suitcase.
I think that Lizzie Borden has so much controversy around this that I think it baffles people that some people would say, yes, she did it, and some people would say, no, she didn't do it. So I think it's going to be
Us right here. We both have two different perspectives.
But you believe she did, and I believe she did it.
And now you have been there.
Correct.
Genevieve, have you been there?
No.
So, John, you've been there. We have not been there. So, that'll be fun.
It is. It was so, like, I did the Jack the Ripper tour.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's fascinating to be in an environment that is tried to keep to that time frame, and actually being in some location or the home of a possible murderer, or follow the steps of a Jack the Ripper was a serial killer to an extent,
allegedly,
to walk on these cobblestones that I was there all day going, where the hell are these cobblestones? Why doesn't it look like Charles Dickens in here? And then to find it, and to just all of a sudden go, and you're like, oh my God, I'm walking on the steps of a person that was named Jack the Ripper. That was and this is the spot. You don't see it on TV, but this is the spot.
This is the difference between an Aries and a Scorpio. I see that everywhere because I'm like something happened, something crazy happened over here because that's how my brain works.
But I was
That's everywhere to me.
it's
You just don't
fascinating.
hear about it.
It's fascinating in those two locations, Jack the Ripper and
Sure.
Lizzie Borden, to be at the top two, like in all of everything. These are two controversial locations about everything that's gone on. It's who did it? I don't know. Are we
Well,
ever gonna
unsolved,
know?
right? It's
Are we ever
unsolved.
gonna know?
It's unfinished business and it's unsolved mystery.
Correct.
It's
But
perfect.
yeah, I just think that it's wonderful. And if you ever have a chance, go to Lizzie Borden's bed and breakfast and go to Jack the Ripper tour. The gentleman that I went on, you get the little candle, and he wrote a book, and it's fascinating. It's just mind blowing how wonderful and it was executed. So that's that. So I'm excited that next week not next week, the next
episode.
because I think we might have somebody else, but we can't say because, of course, that's how it works. But I'm thinking, when can we do that? Lizzie Borden, like 2 weeks?
Sure.
I'm looking forward to hearing your interpretations.
I will even wear my Lizzie Borden dress that night.
Yes.
I will not.
Oh.
I will do Lizzie with
All
nothing.
right.
How's that?
I will wear my Lizzie Borden dress and have my hatchet.
I could just wear a Lizzie Borden hat. That would be fun.
Sure.
I'm kidding. But I mean, I find it fascinating. You even though you have your own depiction of who or what with this one, I don't think we would ever know. I hope that when we pass on, you get a whole list of questions that you
the survey.
Oh, see, I told you. I knew this. Like is the aliens, like is there aliens coming to get, like, all that stuff. I want to know what happened at Chappaquiddick.
I'd never get through the gate. I'd have way too many things to look up the answers to first.
But you have all the rest of your.
I mean, you're right. So.
We'll meet on the third cloud, and we could do one of these. We'll be sitting there.
Third cloud.
With Sarah. But I appreciate you. I really do enjoy what we're doing, and I think it's fascinating to hear other people's things. And like you said, the next time we do it, I think it's going to be nice to hear other people's depictions of certain things when it comes to this. So
maybe we should put it out to a vote. We should present our cases of why we think.
I wonder if we were able to do a survey and put it out there and see who, before we do it, who.
We can do it with our comments too.
Do it.
I think it'd be interesting. And maybe people can actually give their reason why they're thinking it did happen.
You can be the defense. I'll be the prosecution. Sarah can be the judge.
Oh my God.
That's fun. But
I'm going to get one of those 16-cent, powdered wig.
But I hope
you guys can be in your Borden gear and I'll be in my.
Think about this.
Guys.
Right. I think it's great. But think about this. There is a lot of other history to the Lizzie Borden side that I don't know if everyone knows what it is.
Oh yeah, one of the things I wrote for Hushed Up History was about the other tragic Borden family member.
Mm-hmm.
Which really entails two.
Luana's on my side.
Good.
She totally did.
That's great. Jay's on my side. So we're even. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
everyone, for watching. Sarah, it's always a pleasure. I think that you're fascinating when you discuss these types of things, because
Thank you.
I hope that everybody gets the want that they want to go based
Yeah.
off of this.
We should do. Yeah, we need to book a trip.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me come on here and talk about some of these places and this crazy history that I feel should always have a bigger spotlight than it does right now.
But I do have to say this, and I don't know if who I spoke to about this will all lead up to my favorite place in the world, Salem. And I know it's Sarah's too. So, and we all been there.
Got lots of thoughts on it.
I got lots of thoughts, and I think if you ever
that's a mini series.
Oh yeah,
killing me.
But
just book out a month, and every Tuesday we'll just have to talk about
one section of Salem. But I love the fact that what you get from them everywhere is all the different facets, and they make you make the decision. And I love the fact of it. Here are this, and you do what you did. It's not negating the fact that what they did was what they did, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't worry about it.
I don't know what you're saying.
I don't want to end up giving like there's a whole bunch of avenues about the reasoning behind why they believe these children are based off of a finger pointing, and there's a lot of things and reasons behind it.
I'm telling you.
We should also talk about Poe and his death. That would be another good controversy. We can talk about.
Or maybe it might be great to talk about going on a Poe.
Is this another series?
Yeah, I got that one. All right.
No.
It's 8:53.
We just
now
like
8:53.
That's all. We just like being on the lives. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone. We don't.
Thank you.
Keep an eye out on for next week's, and in 2 weeks we'll be going to the Borden's house. So very excited.
Very excited to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm excited.
I'm preparing my case.
But thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Sarah. And
thank you.
Again, thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next Tuesday on Parlour Tea.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.